Sanshi Böge Joshi Medo Jama Rera Lingshe Ninde Genpa de Sanje Shinto Mede Dogen Namda Shinla Jebara Jo Ye Dama Goro Rana Menda
Pendala
Lamne Ya
Kala
Dara Ya Sanje Jedan Zoye Janam La Janjo Bardo Dane Jabdo Daji Chushe Gibe Sanam Ge Jala Penjere Sange Jobara Jo Sange Jedan Zoye Janam Janjo Bardo Dane Jabdo Daji Chushe Gibe Sanam Ge Jala Penjere Sange Jobara Jo Sange Jedan Zoye Janam La Janjo Bardo Dane Jabdo Daye Chushe Gibe Sonam Ye Jala Benjire Sangye Sho Zenden Kyuji Kenrob Sereki Dalue Timo Mimba Raps Gadan Denje Sholo Doba Ye Loje Bobe Nawa Zedo Tashidele Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, a very good day to all of you. So as you remember, we are going through the Lojong the Lojong practice in one session by Chim Namkha. So far we have covered the part of so the book has three sort of sections: the preparatory one, the main section, the preparatory section, the main section, and the concluding session, concluding section. And so far we have covered both the preparatory as well as we have covered the preparatory part, and now we are going through with the the main part, within the main part. Since this is the Tepo Chembil Lojong, which is the Mahayana mind training, so we have the practice, the training of the Bodhichittas. So as we all know, Bodhichitta, generally Bodhichitta is the conviction, to achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings or other sentient beings, for the sake of to achieve enlightenment for the sake of other sentient beings. So this is the Bodhichitta. And but when we go into it more, when we dive deeper into the philosophical aspect of the Mahayana text, we usually find so there are variations of bodhicitta, like bodhicitta, different ways of activating the bodhicitta, different ways of activating the bodhicitta, different ways of different types of bodhicitta, as well as bodhicitta, different similar aspiration with the same name as a bodhicitta. So in other words, there are two types of bodhicitta. So the one that we are dealing with since last week is known as the ultimate bodhicitta and the conventional bodhicitta. So even though the ultimate bodhicitta is known as the ultimate bodhicitta, but when we go with the definition of the bodhicitta itself in the philosophical text, the ultimate bodhicitta is not a real bodhicitta, because a bodhicitta is the aspiration to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So the definition of a bodhicitta is the conviction to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And so far, the ultimate bodhicitta, the conviction and the aspiration of the mindset or the attitude of the ultimate bodhicitta is different from the conventional bodhicitta. So conventional bodhicitta is the real bodhicitta, as we all know. So we will come as to why the ultimate bodhicitta is called the ultimate bodhicitta. in a few minutes. So far we have covered what is known as the conventional bodhicitta. So conventional bodhicitta is the bodhicitta that is popularly known, the widely known bodhicitta, the conviction to rising from compassion and culminating into a conviction of achieving enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That is the definition of bodhicitta, a conventional bodhicitta, a real bodhicitta. So, so far we have covered the conventional bodhicitta. So we have a few chapters left. So I will read from the. So in regard to the conventional bodhicitta, so there are two types. I think it's important to talk about this here. There are two types of activating the conventional bodhicitta or bodhicitta in general. And one is known as the 7-point cause and effect, the 7-point cause and effect training. And another one is known as the training of giving and taking. And so one actually came from Gyawa Chamba, which is so when we talk about the Buddha Shakyamuni, he has 8 apostles or 8 main disciples in the Mahayana, according to the Mahayana teachings. And of them, they are known as the Nyewe Sechen Ge. So the closest closest spiritual sons. 8 close spiritual sons. So he has 8 of them, and of them, Gyawa Chamba, Maitreya Buddha or Maitreya Bodhisattva, in the case of Buddha Shakyamuni's lifetime, from an ordinary perspective, from an historical perspective, Manjushri and Maitreya are both bodhisattvas, but from the ultimate sense, from the sense of the understanding of in the Tantra, as well as from the deeper understanding of the Mahayana text, both all of the 8 spiritual sons of the Buddha are actually none other than Buddhas themselves. They are all enlightened beings. So of 8 of them, of the 8, the 2 of them are Manjushri and Maitreya bodhisattvas. So all forms of so the Buddha's teaching usually lies in the two sections. One is known as the method or compassion, and the other is wisdom. So wisdom and compassion. So all the teachings of the Buddha that deals with compassion were taught or were transferred. The transmission was given to Maitreya Buddha or Maitreya Bodhisattva, and all the forms of all the types of teaching that deals with developing the wisdom were transmitted to Manjushri. So in that sense, the training of 7-point cause and effect, 7-point cause and effect training, the training of bodhicitta through 7-point cause and effect, that was passed. That actually came from the line of the compassionate line, or it was transmitted through Buddha, of course, throughout the Maitreya Buddha or Maitreya Bodhisattva, and so on and so forth. And then the other practice, which is known as the practice of giving and taking, or the training of giving and taking. So the training for what? This is the training for bodhicitta. So bodhicitta training the bodhicitta training of giving and taking was, of course, started by the Buddha and passed down to the Bodhisattva Manjushri, or the Buddha Manjushri, and then from him to Shivalha, the Shantideva, and so on and so forth. So there are true streams of practices, as we call them, the true streams of practices, true streams, true riverine, which all came down to, so all the rivers and culminate into an ocean. So in the same way, all these practices were combined and made into a practice that can be taken. It was made into a practice. It was made into a spiritual spiritual practice that can be taken by a single individual. So it doesn't. You don't have to be. That was actually started by. That was actually innovated by Adisha Dibamkara, George Panda Adisha or Adisha. So in Tibet we have both lines intact and can be practiced by one single person. In India, since it was started from when Buddha first gave the teaching, this particular practice, the 7-point cause and effect training and the giving and taking training. So they were passed down to different gurus, and so it was practiced by different traditions. But in Tibet, it was all combined together by the great master Adisha, and so it was practiced together. It can be practiced. It can be, and it is practiced by a single individual, a single practitioner. But there's always a recommendation, or it is recommended that the 7-point. So for a person with greater mental capacity, the giving and taking is recommended, and the person with a lower mental capacity, the 7-point the 7-point cause and effect training is recommended. So in this particular teaching, we are going with this giving and taking practice. So the giving and taking, as well as the 7-point cause and effect practice, both are to train someone to cultivate bodhicitta. So therefore, even though the methods are different, they both culminate into cultivating bodhicitta for the practitioner. And so the practice that we are going through today is known as the practice of Tonglen, or give and take, or Dakshin Nyamje. So not necessarily the Tonglen is a little different. We are talking about the Dakshin Nyamje here. And and as part of the give and take practice, exchanging, let me make a little correction here. The other training is not give and take. The other training is known as Dakshin Nyamje, which is exchanging oneself with others. So one training is called 7-point cause and effect. The other training is called exchanging oneself with others. So exchanging all the goodness that one has with all the negativity that the other person has, and you exchange them. So in order to do that, you have to be very courageous. So because of that, it is not for the weak-hearted, the weak-minded. That is why the give and take, or exchanging oneself with other practices, recommended for individuals with the greatest mental capacity only. And for most of us, the 7-point cause and effect training is much more recommended. So within the Dakshin Nyamje practice, give and take practice, give your goodness to others and take others, the negativities of others unto yourself. So we have the give and take practice here. So when we exchange ourselves with others, we also practice into the Tonglen, which is give and take. And so far, we have covered the give and take last week. So I will read a little bit from the lines. So Tedoni gomba dagi madinam koa donge gi nguju la nebe ningje donge nguju tada le jede dewa kiba lana meba la ngu te chedo lu longjo gewe zawa tamche tangnim do samla lu yishinga nugo rumbuchi gyurs. So last week we actually covered the taking part, but not the giving part. So now today we will start from the giving part. So last week we talked about the taking that all sentient beings in the universe are going through some form of misery, greater or lesser. Some are going through greater misery, some are going through lesser misery, but are all of them are going through misery, no doubt. So so therefore we generate loving kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings, and we take their the suffering, their miseries, and the cause of their miseries onto us, and also we take all the sentient beings, the defilements, the mental defilements, and the imprints of the defilements, and so on and so forth, onto us. And except for the Buddhas and our own gurus, which we visualize as perfect enlightened beings, other than the Buddhas and our own gurus, all other beings in the universe are going through some sort of misery, and we take all of them into us. And then we visualize that when we take all of those misery, the miseries of the all sentient beings onto us, then we envision them turning or transforming into a balloon, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger through all the miseries that it's being filled with. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then somehow it sort of extrapolates into the whole expanse of the universe, and then then it's gone. It evaporates. So that was the practice that we have covered last week. So now we will read from the English as well. So what I just read in Tibetan, I will read in English. So as you meditate on emptiness, reflect. So this is the giving part now. How sad that all these mothers of mine are caught within the immediate conditions of suffering and cyclic existence. So note to be made here is when we say mothers, we're actually referring to sentient beings, because all sentient beings, so it's a very long story, but all sentient beings have been our mother, our mothers. So we can talk about that later if we want, if we need to. But so when we say mother, we are actually talking about all sentient beings, because it is believed that all sentient beings have been our mother or mothers one time or several times or many times within our lives, within our existence in samsara, because the time that we spend in samsara were immense, immeasurable, and so there are and the times that we were born from, actually there are 4 types of birth, from womb, from egg, and then from heat, and then magical birth, egg birth, womb birth, and the heat, warmth or heat birth. So for the womb birth and the egg birth, we always need a mother, and so therefore the amount of time, the amount that the sentient being has been our mother, and when they were our mothers, the kindness that they have showered upon us is immense. So therefore, so that's why we feel gratitude towards them and we help them. So this is we deal with this when we practice the 7-point cause and effect practice. So this is another story. So here, when we say mother, we are actually referring to sentient beings. So this is to be noted. So all these mothers of mine are caught within the immediate conditions of suffering and cyclic existence. I shall free them from these immediate conditions of suffering and place them in unexcelled bliss. Okay. So here is a very interesting effect here. When we say, I shall free them from these immediate conditions. So immediate means immediately. So they are so we always talk about cause and condition. So the mother sentient beings, other sentient beings, or other people, or anyone other than myself, of course, we are also in samsara. So we are all in samsara. So let's say all of us, instead of saying mother or me or other. So we are all living in the vicinity, in the midst of, we are all living in the midst of either misery itself or in the immediate enclosure of misery, or immediate causes and conditioning of misery. So therefore, even though we are not going through misery at this very moment, you never know. Maybe the next moment we're going through something immensely miserable. So therefore, misery is uncertain, and we are living in the midst of immediate enclosure of misery. So therefore, that is the immediate conditions of suffering. And so what we are doing is, so I said this is a giving practice. So what we give them is so we take away their suffering earlier. So what we give them now is we give them bliss. We take away their, it's like cleaning a house and putting new things in a, so you take away the old cup, clean the table, and then you put a new cup and new saucer and new crockeries. So similarly, so you take away all the sufferings, all the miseries of the sentient beings. That is the taking part. Now you give them the new pot, the new cup, the new food. So which is the joyfulness. So we give them. I shall free them. I shall give them the freedom of. So I shall free them from these immediate conditions of suffering and place them in unexcelled bliss and happiness. And to this end, I will give away everything, my body, material, resources, and my roots of virtue. So, thinking in this manner, transform your body into a precious, wish-fulfilling jewel and confer to all your dear mothers. So mother here means sentient beings, other people, material resources equal to the wealth of all the gods and humans, filling all of space, as well as your virtues accumulated throughout the 3 times. So here what we did was we give away everything, all the material possessions that we have, and not just the material possession, even the let's say the spiritual possession, all the merits that we have accumulated in the countless lifetime that we have taken. So all of that is also dedicated to the mother sentient beings. So you might, so maybe, this can pop up in a question later. So I will try to answer it later. So you can ask about why you would give away the spiritual accumulation. So I think that would be that will be an interesting discussion. So you have accumulated so much merit for eons and eons, and now you would give it all away for sentient beings. Why would you do so? So that might be an interesting question. I don't know if you have that question, we can discuss that. So now we will go to the, okay. So material resources, okay, filling all spaces. 대신도 심지어 탐지라고. So you replicate that towards all sentient beings. 괜히 롱라 겸버차 시바니 옥치르도 롱지 겨와 탐지 심지어 땅. 대다로 권베 띵인 진 나도 왕자나 당신기 동해 군종래 대다로 집에 귤라 겨와 땅. 로종기에 귤라 겨와 땅 로귤라 겨와 대다로 집에 귤라 겨와 땅 로종기에 거기 송소스. So as you give this, so this is the giving part. So if you give this, so you give them the freedom of freedom of no longer being attached, no longer being tethered to the misery of some samsaric miseries. So this is what you give them. So and when you take away their miseries, So that relief itself is what you are giving them. So when you take away something, you're also giving them something. So as you give these, so now I'm reading from the text again. As you give this, imagine that your dear mothers, again, sentient beings, enjoy the perfect gathering of all favorable conditions for Dharma practice, and that they accomplish the true accumulations and attain perfect Buddhahood. Make this contemplation in regard to all sentient beings. So when you inhale, when you exhale, so when you inhale, you take all the misery of sentient beings, and when you exhale, you give away all the goodness that you have within you, and as well as the freedom, the joyfulness, and everything goodness that you have and that you could give to other sentient beings. And by doing so, earlier the mother sentient beings were deprived of the ability, the luxury to to commit to a Dharma practice. But now, because you have taken away all their miseries, and now they are endowed with all the joyfulness, and so they are in other words, they are in a good mood to start something afresh. Now they are in the proper they are in the proper state to start to initiate Dharma practice. So enjoy the perfect gathering of all favorable conditions. And okay, so they commit to the Dharma practices, and by doing so, they were able to accomplish the two accumulations: accumulation of the merit and accumulation of the wisdom, and attain perfect Buddhahood. Make this contemplation in regard to all sentient beings. So we replicate that towards all other sentient beings. So again, so there is a line which says, place the two astride your breath. So this is from the Lojong root lines of the Lojong text. So this indicates that when you exhale, you give all your wealth and virtues to sentient beings. And as you practice in this manner and experience the dawning of meditative absorptions, you then take on the sufferings and their origins of both yourself and others. So suffering and the origins of suffering is, normally we call them the Four Noble Truths: suffering and the origin of suffering, or the cause of suffering. So it's the same thing. So when you exhale, you give away, you give all the good things to other sentient beings. And when you inhale, when you are into deep meditative absorption, then also then envision that all the sentient beings suffering and the causes or the origin of the sufferings, origin of the miseries that the mother sentient beings are going through, who are drawn towards you, that you are absorbing all of them. When you engage in this way, it is said, you derive the benefit of attaining the realization of mind training as these meditative absorptions arise within you. So this is a mind training process. So mind training, so training your mind to take, you are training your mind to take all the, so if you excuse me, you are training your mind, you are training your mind to take all the shit. So, and when you do that, then let's say when you are in the real world, when you are faced with so much of that thing, then you are better equipped to deal with all of that, because you have. So it's like going through the the military drills. So when they go through so much of the the intensive military training and military drill, so a number of things that you do, like daily chores, become such a convenient thing for them. So it's similar. So when you always keep on practicing, practice taking all the miseries of other sentient beings, you keep doing that during your practices, then when it is a mind training, in the sense that when you are faced with so much of that thing in a workplace, or in life itself, or in wherever you face those things, then you are better equipped to deal with that. Because this is something that you take, I think that the phrase is, this has been your breakfast for so many years. So if you take that as your breakfast, doesn't matter. Like if somebody is to give that to you, if you take miseries for your breakfast, then if somebody is to serve that as your meal, then you have no complaint, because you know that is something that you do all the time. It's nothing. It is not something that would worry you. So now this indicates that when you you take on the suffering and their origins of both yourself and others. When you engage in this way, it is said you derive the benefit of attaining the realization of So now second, the meditation or the ultimate awakening mind is as follows. So now we will go to the ultimate. Now the second part of the main practice is the ultimate bodhicitta. So the second awakening mind. So here, because the Tibetan word for bodhicitta, there are two types. There are two. One is Changjugi Sem, which is bodhicitta, literally translated bodhicitta, Changjugi Sem, and the other one is Sem Ge, which means the awakening mind. So here, the writer used the author used the other term. So they are both synonyms of bodhicitta, awakening mind or the bodhicitta are same. Niba Tundam Changjugi Sem Gombanes. So in the Tibetan text it says bodhicitta, but here it says awakening mind. But they're both same thing. It's different. It's a synonym. So niba tunam chanju sem gombane jangne samye tyon la jebani da gewa dang shinge dongye je nyu ba dang lo member la samye tongni gomde ten ngobo 탐지 송진이 수두데 송화 탐지 변벌 나와 탐지 타노는 나와 탐지 림기 제베 뉘 차라빈 ten 초출랐다베 차추 샤다도 균에 된 바치도 주베 대마주 대다기 된 바 도망 메주베 변벌 된 바메 곰스 so so now here again we are reading from the root lines of Lojong, which is having become trained, engage in the secret point. Having become trained, so having trained in the conventional awakening mind or conventional bodhicitta, now engage in the secret point. So the secret point being the okay. So what is the secret point? I will come into this. So this suggests. So I will read from the text again. So this suggests that when you are able to exchange your virtues with others' sufferings, you then meditate on emptiness, which is kept secret from the weak-minded. This is as follows. So this may. So I will explain quite briefly, but then if there are some questions later, we can go deeper regarding why it is why it is not for the weak-hearted or the weak-minded. So I think we explained earlier that the practice of exchanging oneself with others is not for the weak-minded, weak-hearted. Similarly, the practice of Tongbanyi or emptiness is also not for the weak-minded, because. So it is easy to talk about emptiness because whenever we say, whenever we do any ritualistic, whenever we do any rituals in the tantric Buddhism, in the Vajrayana Buddhism, we always say Om Soba Shuddha Sadama Soba Shuddha Hamdongmani Bukyo. All phenomena are empty of having an inherent existence, and from that emptiness rises this and that and this and this deity and that mandala and so on and so forth. So this is it's a widespread practice, and also we all know that emptiness is a big part of the Buddhist practice. But then the problem is when you are into the so I will try to keep it as brief as we can. So when we talk about emptiness being so important, what happens is that emptiness becomes so much important that it is so difficult for us. It kind of become sacrilegious for us to detach ourselves from the practice of emptiness. Or so for us to detach ourselves from the understanding of emptiness as we know it, that act itself kind of turns sacrilegious. So therefore, we tend to lean so much, too much towards emptiness. And emptiness, as we always keep on saying, emptiness is a big, big part of the Buddhist practice. Then there is this the danger of falling too much into the emptiness aspect. And what happens here? That is one point. And another point is when we go too much into emptiness. That is for the one I just explained is for the trained one actually, but for the untrained one, when you talk about emptiness, and when the for the untrained one, when they actually get the idea intellectually, they get the idea of what emptiness means. There is the threat, there is the danger of them fearing that falling into the pit of nihilism, that nothing exists. So there's a very thin line between emptiness and empty, or emptiness and nothingness. So when we talk about emptiness, we're not, of course, we're not talking about nothingness. When we just touch on the surface, emptiness seems to be very beautiful and all that thing. But when we go a little deeper into emptiness will actually feel like nothingness. And only when we are able to see emptiness as beautiful first, and then nothing later, and then we see the true beauty of emptiness afterwards. So we have to go through like three sort of processes to understand emptiness. So anyway, so there is an example we give in the text usually. So the example given was someone riding a horse. So someone who has never rode on a horse before, they never fear riding a horse because they have never rode on a horse. So they think it's so much fun and all that. So emptiness is like that for someone who has never heard of it. Who has never heard about emptiness, never learned about emptiness. Maybe just heard the word emptiness. That is not the thing. So someone who has not heard about emptiness, not learned about emptiness at all, that person does not fear emptiness. Now someone similar to someone who has never rode on a horse. Then there are people who start riding a horse. When they first start riding a horse, most of us, when we start riding a horse, especially a very tall, large horse, we get scared because we don't know how to ride. We feel like we can't trust the animal, and the mare would throw us off, and we always live in that kind of fear, that kind of uncertainty. That is those who do not know how to ride well. But then when you become an professional rider, when you become a professional horse rider, then so this is the second one, is similar to someone who has learned about emptiness quite, but not deeply enough. So those people will really be scared of emptiness because there is the danger of misunderstanding or crossing the line between emptiness and emptiness and nothingness. So once you touch nothingness, then it's like nothing exists. So what is the point of doing Dharma practice? What is the point of refraining from committing the 10 negative deeds? And what is the point of committing oneself to the 10 positive deeds, and so on and so forth? Because there's nothing truly exists. So if nothing truly exists means things do not exist at all, then there is no point in doing anything, even spiritual practices, because whether you do spiritual practices or not, nothing exists at all. But then we always use the term truly. Nothing truly exists, nothing really exists, and so on and so forth. So if nothing truly exists, then nothing exists. And so therefore, if nothing exists, then therefore the logic follows that even spiritual, the spiritual destinations are not there as well. Spiritual goals cannot be fulfilled because it does not exist at all. The spiritual goals cannot be fulfilled because the spiritual goals does not exist, because it does not exist really. So this thing comes up. But what one had to understand, maybe we can go into this a little later during the questions. So Now the third one is a professional rider. The professional rider knows the horse well, kind of, almost knows the mannerism of the horse itself, and so therefore does not fear the horse at all. Similarly, someone who has deeply understood the meaning of emptiness, not just intellectually, but through experiential understanding of emptiness. For those people, for those individuals, they do not fear emptiness at all. So, as we understand, emptiness is not for the weak-minded. So people who are into Dharma, but not necessarily, deeply into the Dharma, or haven't studied intensively enough, the emptiness is not for them. Okay. So here we are trying to explain emptiness. So emptiness, as I mentioned earlier, we're not talking about emptiness as in nothingness, but things being empty, of having an inherent existence. So how do we establish that? So all phenomena, so we are reading from the lines, all phenomena are, in general, subsumed into the two classes of object and subject. As you then examine individually all the objects that appear as material realities, they are reduced to subtle particles. So we are talking about things that we can touch, the tangible objects here. So subtle particles. Invariably, these turn out to be midpoints interfacing the 6 directions. So the particles, which means they are not established as substantially real singular entities. And since they do not exist as substantially real multiple entities, and so one meditates on the, okay, so I'll just read the line first. Meditate on the non-substantiality of materially constituted realities. So this is more in accordance, so the argument here is more in accordance with the positions put forth by the non-Buddhist as well as the lower Buddhist schools, such as Chittamatrins, the mind-only schools, and so on and so forth, who posit that there is, who states that there is a things do exist inherently, and the way they pointed out is through, when one dissects, let's say, a physical body or a tangible body, when you can dissect it into particles and atoms and so on and so forth, and then there is something to hold on to at the end. And so here it is actually disapproving that the position declared or stated by the lower schools of Buddhism, as to, in order to dispute their establishment, or their way of positing how things exist inherently. So this may or may not be relative to us in today's time, because this is more to deal with, so this is more getting more into the philosophical differences that has held between the upper school and the lower school. So when we say upper school, we are talking about upper school of Buddhist tenets, which is the Umapa, Madhyamikas, the middle ways, and the lower school of Buddhist teachings. Sorry, Umapa and Senzamba both are from the Tepa Chimbo. Umapa, Madhyamika, the middle way, and the mind only are both from the upper Buddhist tenet. But even among the upper Buddhist tenet, the Semzamba, the mind only school, they state that the things do exist inherently. So this particular statement here that we just read is to dispute the positions made by the mind-only school. So maybe it's not relevant at the moment. So we will go a little bit further here. Okay, so So far, we have disputed the inherent nature of tangible objects, external objects. Now we will do the same with the internal objects, intangible objects, intangible things. Nang ribani devaka maung ba magi tada khado me ib me ne me tada matutsana yambar matu bena nang rikwa dembar me basamos. So the mind, okay, so I have to read from here. As for inner awareness, the past is no more, the future is yet to be, and the present is devoid of color, shape, and spatial location. If it does not exist in such a manner, then it does not exist as a substantial reality. So, therefore, contemplate inner awareness too as devoid of substantially real existence. Che pembo matube the madutsana, temper matube and na riba temba sambos. Chi pembo matube, comje you matub, na riba na matube, comje lo matub, comje na chawatela, she says. So, so now it is to be understood that when it comes to the mind again, so there is no single entity that can be pinpointed as mind. So when we talk about a particular thing called mind, we either have to talk about, so if you were to give an example of a single entity, a mind as a single entity, then you have to say mind, the mind or the thought of drinking water. So the thought of drinking water, the desire to drink water. So the thought of the desire to drink water, that itself is not an, even though it's a single entity, that too cannot be established as a single entity, in the sense that the thought to drink water has a past. So when you are actually thinking about drinking water, as you keep thinking about drinking water, within the few fraction of a second, the thought itself dissipates. And so as you keep thinking, the thought itself keeps rolling into itself, or rolling into past tense. So as you keep thinking about drinking water, the very first thought of drinking water actually is no longer there. When you start thinking of drinking water and go to fetch water, between that amount of time, within the thousands of millisecond, the very first thought is no longer there. And since we cannot establish single a single entity as the thought to drink water, because the thought to drink water, the desire to drink water, so the thought which is a desire to drink water, the desire, it can also not be explained in, okay, so there's no color, shape, and all these things. This is quite easy to understand, no need to explain that. So usually when we try to deconstruct mental continuum or internal phenomena from having an inherent existence, we usually distangle them into past, present, and future. So the future is yet to come, the past is already gone, and the present thought of desiring to drink water itself is changing, itself is rolling into itself. So there's no way to pinpoint that this is the mind, this is the desire to drink water. So therefore, since there's nothing to pinpoint, there is no single entity to pinpoint that this is it. So therefore, there is nothing that can be constituted as inherently existing, because everything is relatable. The past is relatable relative to the present, and the present to the future. And since we cannot properly establish past and future, we can not also establish present as well, because present is also relative to both past and future. So through by disentangling, from detaching all parts of the mind into past, present, and the past, present, and future, we disentangle. By doing that, we posit, we prove that the mind does not have an inherent existence. Anyway, we can go deeper into that later. So because okay, the freedom. So therefore, contemplate into awareness as devoid of substantially real existence. So okay, so far we have been. So chi pembo madrube gomje yu madrub na riba madrube gomje lo madrub gomje dan chawa tela shisha seba shisha. So since the external world of material realities does not exist, there is no object of meditation. And since what appears as inner awareness too does not exist, since we established that just now, then the meditating mind does not exist as well. So there's no subject, there isn't either the subject or the object. So this freedom, this vacancy or the freedom of object of meditation and the meditating mind, or this freedom or this non-existence of object and subject is known as the exhaustion of knowable objects. So all knowable objects are exhausted in the sense one is not able to comprehend anything anymore because there is nothing out there. When I say out there, I'm not talking about external things, but everything that can be known, that is knowable, anything that is experiential, anything that is thinkable. So all subject matter are no longer existent in the sense it doesn't have an inherent existence. So therefore, all phenomena to be examined, investigated, known for, or seen are exhausted. There's nothing to be seen, there's nothing to be meditating, there's nothing to be experienced, and so on and so forth. And since there's nothing to see, there is nothing that can see as well. Because in order to see something, in order for one to be able to see something, there has to be something to be seen. Since we established already that there's nothing to be seen out there, so it is automatically deducted that there is nothing that can see as well. So if there's nothing to see, then there is nothing we can see. So the things to be seen and the things that do see, they are both exhausted by they have been negated by each other somehow. So so the exhaustion, so the freedom of nothing to meditate and no meditation is known as exhaustion of knowable objects. So knowable object is a term that we use for all phenomena, everything. So everything is knowable object. So in other words, we are saying this is the exhaustion of everything, because there is nothing to observe, there is nothing that can observe. Now, so and to abide unwavering in this state is known as to meditate on suchness. So suchness is another name for emptiness. So emptiness is also known as suchness, because so we are talking about there's no this is it. So the fact that there is no this is it is the this is it. So you see the irony here. So this Tongbanyi or emptiness is the suchness. Tongbanyi emptiness is this is it. But there is no this is it. And the fact that there is no this is it, the realization of the fact that there is no this is it is the this is it. So therefore Tongbanyi is the suchness. And as such, okay. 대잉하려 많이 번내버 되고나니 대회는 율지야마 주벌로 뢰지야 미진 지야미 또 봐야나라 퇴디 러라샤 주비징베 시민을 러나 저한테서 매지 송스 대랑 대잉하려 많이 번내버 되고나니 공시송. So this can be well, these are some disputable subjects that in different tradition of Buddhist school within Tibet, Tibetan Buddhism. Different, anyway, so we will just go into this as the text says. As such, just as the objective just as the objective world does not exist in any mode, the mind too does not grasp it in any way. So placing your mind naturally with ease in the state of non-conceptuality, so place your mind naturally with ease in the state of non-conceptuality. So there is a line from the Lojong Zawa again, which goes, so a mind tangled in knots, if undone, no doubt it will be free. So it sounds very easy. If you untangle the knots, then you are free. Of course, you are free if you untangle the knots. The problem is the thing is that we always feel that it is not the untying of the knot that leads us to liberation, or that frees us. We always feel like we need to tie more knots in order for us to get out, to escape. So we tie more knots to deal with the knots that is already entangled in our mind. So we keep tying more knots and knots and knots and knots, and the entanglement, the knots of entanglement become infinite, somewhat infinite, and so therefore it becomes such a headache for us to free ourselves. So here it says, a mind tangled in knots, if undone, no doubt it will be free. So the tanglement here is the being entangled into absorbing oneself into the suchness of things having a real existence, an inherent existence, a reality of its own, a reality that is not just recognized, or a reality that is not just recognized or validated, a reality that is not just validated by the observer alone, but an entity, a subject entity existing on its own, without and not depending upon the sole labeling of the observer, to be observed as such. So this is what we are being entangled into, and we don't feel like we are thinking such deeply when in our day-to-day business. The thing is because the attitude, the mental attitude of absorbing and being entangled into reality, or the grasping into the reality, grasping into the inherent existence, has become somewhat inherent to us. It has become instinctive towards us. So we do it without thinking twice. And we feel like this is something we should be doing. But in reality, this is something we should be untying rather than keep on tying more knots. So I think we can stop here for today's lessons. The time, okay, yeah, it's a very good timing. Oh, okay, so one more line to tobe chodu tamje shio ana shine mido shindu sejing tangba sele tsamar miziman hadon shesong so with so one more line to read. When all acts of one more paragraph, sorry. When all acts of dissipation and withdrawal of conceptualization cease, this is tranquil abiding. And when the mind remains clear So usually we call them calm abiding, shine. And when the mind remains clear and lucid while free of conceptualization, with no grasping at any signs, this is referred to as the penetrative insight. So the tranquil abiding or calm abiding is the vipassana, and then penetrative insight is shamatha. Pardon is vipassana, sorry. Penetrative insight is vipassana, and tranquil abiding or calm abiding is shamatha. So we will stop here for tonight's lesson. Now open for discussion, please.
Rinpoche, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, loud and clear.
Hello.
Please go on.
I noticed the Dalai Lama always talks about quantum physics. Is that because the teaching on emptiness, there is a correlation between emptiness and quantum physics? And if so, can you explain?
Right. So, a very good question. Thank you. So from my very immature understanding of quantum physics, it is said that I heard that this is the sort of the highest level of like physics. So yeah, so in quantum physics we talk about when we delve deeper and deeper into things, especially into the quantums and quarks and the particles. So the deeper we delve into, we don't find something. There's nothing to pinpoint as to what constitute it. So it is a formation of all forms of particles and atoms and other parts which constitute as so when all assembled, when all of them combined together, it is formed as this and that. So similar to what in the Madhyamika we talk about the simile given in the Madhyamika, in the Mahayana text is Shingda Holo, which is a chariot. So there is a when just Mata Majibetsana without proper observation, for an unobserving onlooker, there is a beautiful chariot. But if one was to investigate what is a chariot, then you cannot, the wheel is not a chariot, the canopy is not a chariot. So you can disentangle this. You can remove all parts of the chariot, and there is nothing that constitute as the chariot. So from my understanding is that in this in quantum mechanics also, it is that when you go deeper and deeper, there's nothing that constitutes as, there's no suchness of anything that you can find. So there's a big similarity between the approach as to what as well as the approach and what the findings that you have from quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and that you find the findings from the Buddhist science, as his Holiness always refers to, Buddhist science of Madhyamika philosophy.
Thank you. And I also have a question. I'm a teacher, and I have two young students who are now been diagnosed with COVID-19. Do you do any prayers? I know we're learning these techniques ourselves, but these are very young and beautiful little souls. They're seniors in high school, and we talk about the cause and effect of karma, but it's very hard for me to understand. These are really like very connected to me. These students are very special, and one is very scared. The other one I feel like she's stronger, but the other boy is very, very scared. And having been sick myself off and on, and anyone who knows, we're adults, and it's very different. But when you're that young, and there's no cure, and there's really nothing to do but to support supportive care. I just want to know. I know you're Rinpoche, and if you could just Daniela and Alan, and just put them in your heart somewhere, because
Sure, sure.
They're really,
Sure.
really suffering.
Is it okay to share their name, or otherwise it's okay? If it's okay, please.
Yes. Daniela Umana and Alan
Umana.
Fedor.
Okay.
Umana. U-M-A-N-A. So
Right.
Daniela
Yep.
Umana and Alan
Umana.
Fedor. And Alan and
right.
Alan and Fedor, F-E-D-O-R.
F-E-D-O-R. Okay.
D-O-R. They're just very, very beautiful little souls, and they're very gentle, and they're all the qualities that we aspire to. And I just, this is what, here we as adults who may have been contaminated by our conditioning and possible other things, but so if you could just please put a little extra.
Certainly. Thank you very much for bringing it to my attention. So I will certainly, we always pray for all sentient beings, but especially since you shared the name of Umana and Alan Fedor. So I will
Daniela Umana.
Daniela Umana. Okay, Daniela Umana. So I will. So I will keep the name.
Because they are
heart
younger.
When we pray.
They are younger,
sure.
right? Because they're so young. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tashi Dile.
Rinpoche, I have a question. It's John.
Please. Hello, John.
Yeah. So the logical proof of inherent non-existence. We still have to deal with the appearances, right? In that so could you just comment on the source of the appearances, and B, and again, this may be kind of a big question, but since the way that we know things, and the way it's been taught to me about in Buddhism, and I'm just going back to I think Rinpoche did a talk on epistemology. To what extent is compassion, again, from a logical standpoint, is it presupposed and a foundation of the epistemology as opposed to an outcome of it?
Can you repeat that again, please? A compassion.
Yeah. So to what extent is compassion as experiential, as a something that seems to be common to life, right? And pointing out that that this experience of compassion, and this is talking about mothers. To what extent is it a foundation of the knowledge of what we can know? Okay, as opposed to another foundation that then yields compassion as the proper choice, given in the big picture, right? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Do you mean what we can know as in our ability to know, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I will try to cope with So the first one. So correct me if I'm just missing if I'm going off the grid, then you can just tell me. So the first one is So in regards to non-inherent existence, the non-existence of inherent existence, or the emptiness of emptiness of inherent existence. So if nothing exists in reality, then how does the appearance comes? So it is very clearly stated in Umanawa, which is known as the middle way, the appearance of the middle way, Umanawa Madhyamika view, appearance of the middle way view. So in this book, it says the appearance comes from delusions. So the delusion, again, is, it's rooted back to ignorance, of course. And from the ignorance that we have culminated for, innumerable lifetimes. So this brings in forth the delusion, and which the delusion then appears, or the delusion then manifest into the appearances. So we have different appearances. So we have all the appearances, good appearance, bad appearance, and all the things. So back to the point, appearances come out of delusion, which are rooted in ignorance. So this is the first part, I think. And the second part is what we can know. And so I think you are talking in the sense of like, when we talk about compassion, so all sentient beings are going through difficulties, misery, and so on and so forth. And how much can we cope with our compassion? Is that the question? Because
my question is really just about, logic is very important in certainly in distinguishing between the different views, and whether one is concerned about nihilism as a real factor in people, real misunderstanding, right? That leads to negative actions, right? So so I'm just wondering if it's on the one hand, it seems to be that Buddhism wants to demonstrate that compassion, and bodhicitta is the outcome of a logical proof, right?
Okay, I got it. Okay.
Right. But yeah, it seems to me if it also presupposes compassion as the foundation.
Okay. Right. I think I got it. So I think it comes back. I think I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning of my talk. So there's a very thin line between nihilism and emptiness, nothingness and emptiness. So so we have to tread very carefully. So first there is the one who never rode a horse, and then there's the individual who has ridden horse once or twice but scared, and then there is the people who is a professional. They are the people who are professional riders. As someone who has never ridden a horse before, I think between compassion and understanding of emptiness, I think understanding of the cultivation of emptiness is more important, because so it's like, so you want to ride a horse, but riding a horse is not the goal here. You want to learn how to ride a horse and then to reach somewhere. So reaching somewhere is the ultimate goal here. And so you are going somewhere to maybe save your fiance, or whatever. You're going to save somebody's life or something. So this comes out of compassion. So the compassion should be there, because the compassion, you remember the bodhicitta. So in order to the conviction to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So when you are in the when you are the when you are not a rider yet, the first thing, the compassion becomes much more important, because you need to be convinced that you should ride on that horse. And once you ride that horse, then having compassion is not that important. Getting to the people to whom you should save is not important. You have to learn how to ride the horse first. Otherwise, you will fall from the horse. So you need to focus more on how to understanding the emptiness itself, inherent existence, that part itself, that is more important. And once you know how to ride the horse very well, in other words, once you have a proper understanding of emptiness itself, then you can focus on your goal, which is to save somebody's life, compassion, and then also ride the horse, which is emptiness. So emptiness, so it depends on which stage you are. So if you are a beginner, if you have not yet ridden a horse, if you have never been on a horse before, then you should focus, the horse being the simile for emptiness or the wisdom. So it is important to first focus on the compassion first, and then once your compassion is strong enough that there is the strong urge to go and save that person's life. That there is no other choice. There's no other way. There's no way other than to learn how to ride a horse. Then you start learning the horse. So you have to pick one thing at a point. So for a beginner, compassion becomes the foundation, and when you become like a kind of an intermediate, then the emptiness or the logical point of view becomes more important. So in the beginning, compassion and devotion and faith, these are more important. But once you are, in the intermediate state, then following the logical and the rational, the rational path, the rational point is much more important. And then when you become a professional, then you will know how to balance both without effortlessly. And so then you will no longer have the question as to, the foundation, the superimposing. I forgot what the term you used. So yeah.
Yeah, so I forget too, but okay. I mean, that's good. I'm not gonna. I have one other question, but I'll let other people ask, and if there's time,
sure.
I'll
Sure.
ask.
Thank you for your question, John. Mm-hmm. Please. So next one.
I guess I'll ask, again, you talked about the idea of giving away our accumulations and the discussion that you'd like to have around giving our merit that we've maybe our lifetimes, infinite number of lifetimes have accumulated, and to give all of it away, and what's the concept or doctrine behind that?
Mm-hmm. So this is a very good question. So I was hoping that somebody would ask that. So thank you for asking that question. So it's a very relevant question, because so here we talk about this. So when we talk about giving and taking, and also a number of visualization practices, they are all mind training, right? Mind training. So giving is also a mind training. You are mentally giving, and taking is also a mind training. So you are mentally taking. In other words, you are not physically taking other people's misery. You're not physically giving away your materials or anything. So it's the mind training, which means you are actually disintegrating. You are actually disintegrating your attachment towards the thing that you prize. So it can be your money, it can be your car, it can be, so for a spiritual practitioner, you don't have all of those material possessions. So what you have, what you prize most now becomes like, the accumulation that you have. So the accumulation of merit becomes your, bank, what do you call that thing? Bank deposit or bank, so the amount of money you have in your bank. So it's similar for a practitioner. Your material, your spiritual wealth or spiritual understanding and spiritual accumulations become equivalent towards a materialistic person's physical or materialistic wealth and properties. So for a practitioner, it's quite easy to give up all of the material needs. Now, what one is stuck with is actually the idea. One is stuck with the practices. So it's very difficult to let go of your Gelugpa practice or your Nyingmapa practice. Buddhism is okay, but this part, like my Lama Tsongkhapa, I cannot give. My Guru Rinpoche, I cannot give. So there is this attachment here. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to disentangle or disintegrate the attachment. So it's a mental training. So we are trying to train our mind into giving. No, we are not physically giving away all of that. So we are not physically giving away all of our these things. So there is another practice. So I think I will tell a story, which is a very there was an instance, a very rich lady from an aristocratic family in Tibet, noble family, and she was very rich, but at the same time she was quite stingy, very stingy actually. She's never given anything without a return. So that lady, that aristocratic lady, so she was in later part of her life, she was into Buddhism, and then there was a teacher who is very, the teacher was very skillful, and the teacher told her that, so that a very good teacher usually sees the weakness of the student and then deals with, so it's like whatever weakness point, physical weakness point you have, so the teacher looks for the mental weakness point and then deals with that. So the teacher saw that her weakness is stinginess, which means she cannot practice generosity, which is the first of the 6 perfections. So so he devised a plan saying, okay, so hold something in your hand, maybe like a very very precious jewel, something very precious, very expensive thing, like let's say a bracelet or something. So you hold it in your right hand and slowly give that to your left hand. And then she did that for a few months or a few weeks or something, and then left to right, right to left, and then she started giving it to her inner family, inner circle, like her husband and then slowly, gradually, she could give that to people unrelated to her. She could give that to beggars, and later she'll become a very generous donor for the poor. So I don't know if it's totally relevant here or not, but actually, what we're talking about here is giving part of the practice. The giving and taking part is actually, it deals a lot about the taking part. When you take other people's misery, it tells a lot about how courageous you are. So in other words, you are developing your own courage. And when you start giving, you are also you are also what do you call that, hammering out parts of your ego related with attachment. So you are actually chiseling. Sorry, yeah, the word is chiseling. So when you practice giving, you are actually practicing chiseling of your attachment. So you are chiseling out the wholeness of your attachments, part by part. You're chiseling out your attachment, and and so by doing that, so this is a mental practice. So you are not necessarily. So similarly, when we do guru yoga and so on and so forth, you envision yourself as the guru, as the deity, but you do not become the guru or the Buddha instantly, that very moment. But you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. It's a mental training. Similarly, this giving and taking is also a mental training. So you start as a practitioner, your most prized possession is your practices and your accumulation, and you give them away mentally. So this is the thing. That was the idea.
Thank you. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. So thank you, John. Bank balance. Okay.
I have a very, I think, very simple question.
Yes, that will be the last question. Please go on.
Oh, do you want me to? I can hold it. It's not that important. Is it?
Just throw it there. Throw it there. So
if an understanding and realization of emptiness is the horse, learning how to ride the horse, and we are usually really learning preliminary earlier practices before we get to the understanding of emptiness, then is learning things like the 6 perfections, the generosity, moral and ethical discipline, patience, all in that sort of order. Is that part of like establishing our destination, and then the emptiness is the horse?
Absolutely. So there is a beautiful line in the 9th chapter of the Bodhisattva Avatar. So which you will, I think you already read this, but you will receive this from Khyentse Rinpoche later on, since we are still in the very beginning. So there's a line which says, which means all the other branches were told by the Buddha in order to prepare us for the last one. So the last one is Sherab, which is the wisdom. So all the other branches were taught by the Buddha in order for us to be, in order to prepare us for the cultivation, development of wisdom, to generating wisdom. So yes, all the other generosity and all the other five perfections are somewhat like a stepping stone for one to perfect wisdom, one to perfect one's wisdom. And so yeah, so that is the purpose. But again, generating wisdom itself is again not the goal. The goal is not riding the horse. Riding horse is not the goal itself. You learn how to ride a horse, and then you gallop on the horse and go to rescue people, or just to do whatever. So that is the kind of the ultimate goal in the end. So thank you very much for the questions and for the interest to everyone. And so now we will stop here. Let's do the dedication. Changju semjo remboje maje banam ge yoroje geba nyamba mebala kone kondo pewara show. So one time maximum. Okay. Me menze de jenjeres Jimmy one boy do boy my German this I will conjuring again Love sign time shine light so wide. Love sign time shine light so wide. Bodhichitta, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bodhichitta, Dan. Hi, Gloria. John.
Oh, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Hi, Yen.